That's going to be in the outtakes.
Not a problem.
All right, here we go. All right, folks, I'm here with a longtime friend of mine, Mr. Chris Fenwick. This dude has been editing video since, I think he may have edited some of the video from, like, Jesus or something, because he's been editing since the beginning of time, which means he knows more about this stuff than almost anybody on the planet. And a week or so ago, I was on his show, Final Cut Grill. Final Cut, what is it? It's Final Cut.
You can call it whatever you want. Technically, it's a funny story. So I came up with a name.
Yeah.
Grill is what it's technically called. And if you want to Google it or search for it, it's FCPX Grill. The problem is it's impossible to say, localize. So I call it the Grill or Final Cut Grill or whatever. I mean, I call it whatever you want. Just download it. That's
all right. It's the Grill. It's the Grill. So anyway, it's a show all about Final Cut, and it was so timely because I was back then. I was in this sort of mode of picking between Final Cut and Premiere Pro. And my friend Joseph Linaski said, dude, go ask Chris. He knows he knows all about that stuff. So I did, and we did a show, didn't we? Yeah. So anyway, let's just dive right into this. You're the Final Cut expert. I'm a noob when it comes to...
one of them.
You're one of them. I mean, I'm a noob when it comes to video editing. I know enough to cut an interview, that has no cuts in it.
You can cut the hell out of a single camera interview shot.
Yes, I can, or a Skype interview like this one. And I'll say that's your fault because you are the one who introduced me to ScreenFlow, which has been my de facto editor for like the past, 3 years-ish or so. But now I'm hitting the wall on that, and I'm starting to see people on YouTube particularly doing these really cool things like motion tracking with titles on reviews and stuff like that. I'm like, come on, I need to be able to do that too.
Must have that.
What
Or
he did. Yeah. It was an MCBHD. So you have to go Google him. So he does these awesome, I'll send you a link to his stuff. Does these awesome product reviews online, and they're highly produced, and he does them out of what looks like a spare bedroom in his home or something. So anyway, I want to get up to that level. I spoke with you guided me towards Final Cut Pro 10. I asked you a bunch of questions about it. I want to have a similar conversation as that we did on your show here for the This Week in Photo audience. And I want to take it from the standpoint, again, like we did on your show, of I'm a photographer. I've been shooting since 1989 and know my way around cameras and all that stuff. But when it comes to video, there are lots of little pitfalls and sand pits and quicksand that is easy to fall into. So let's start with that. The NLE that we choose as an image maker, how important is that to what we do? Like Photoshop, I'd say, is the de facto on the photography side. On this side, what do you think?
I think the important thing to think about, and it really is true, and it's very easy to geek out about this product or that. I know, our friend Joseph, for many years, he was aperture expert. Now he's the photos expert. And you've always been, the Lightroom guy, and you guys still get along. You don't throw food at each other when you go to lunch.
Exactly.
Right? So ultimately, what you're talking about is a tool that serves an end purpose. And what you need to be able to do when you're video editing, when you're editing video, is you need to be able to, one, manage large amounts of data, two, sift through that data in a meaningful way that allows you to categorize, catalog, organize, favorite, keyword, whatever you want to call it. You need to be able to find the best parts again. And then you need to be able to selectively string that stuff out in order so you can tell some sort of a story.
Yeah.
In your photography world, you tell a story in an instant, in a frame, and it's fascinating what you do. And I always find it fascinating to listen to photographers when they talk about, the tension or the framing or the lighting or the, where, your what's the thing called? Perspective,
Yeah, that thing.
That thing, and you guys do so much in a single frame, and we are kind of, image storytelling neophytes by comparison, because I have to use 24 or 30 of them a second to tell a story, and you're doing it in one split second. So, but ultimately, that's what you're doing, is you're telling a story. So it doesn't matter if I'm using Final Cut 10 or Premiere or Sony Vegas, please no, or Avid. I mean, ultimately, it really doesn't. What has to happen is that the tool that you choose has to work for you in a way that it gets out of your way, because nothing is more frustrating than sitting in front of a computer box with all the blinky lights and thinking, I want to do this and I don't know how.
Right.
And,
right.
There's two ways that we deal with any technology, whether it's, Photoshop and filters and whatnot, or a nonlinear editor. Some people, and these people, they sit down in Photoshop and they open up the image, and then they go to the effects menu and they go, what's this filter do? What's this filter do? What's this? Or Instagram, what's this filter do? That's one thing that you can do. You can be like, a filter whore that just goes clipping through them until you go, oh, I like that, and I'm done. Or you can say, I have an image in my head, and I know what I want to make this look like.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to take the tools in front of me and I'm going to do what I want to do to make it look that way.
Yep. And that's the best way to learn, right? To reverse engineer something, whether it be your idea or another photo or some other work, reverse it and figure out what the steps were to make that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I used to do that when I was learning After Effects. I would watch TV and a commercial would come on, or a trailer or a bumper or a little animated lower third, whatever. Yeah. And I would go, can I do that? No. Click, 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 click. And I would just sit there, during the television show, which I wasn't watching because I was just watching the commercials and breaks and bumpers and stuff like that. Yep. But anyway, yes, reverse engineering something is good. But more importantly, to my point, is you can be a victim of your filters and you get what they have given you, which is the typical kind of Instagram thing, right? And for the record, I hate Instagram, but whatever. It's like, oh, I'm going to do, look at this, I'm old-timey. Or you say, no, I want to be this much old-timey, or I want to be old-timey with a burnt edge and not the torn edge. And how am I going to draw burn? Right. And so it's a different way of using the exact same tools, and one certainly offers more challenge. It also might frustrate the hell out of you because maybe you don't have the chops to get to what you want to do. So back to the question, sorry, detour.
Yeah. No, go for it. Go for it. This is gold.
Choosing the NLE that works for you, and in all of the things that it needs to do for you. In the computer industry for decades now, we've talked about the thing called the total cost of ownership.
Yeah.
And you can look at a Macintosh and say, yeah, that's a $3,000 computer. And then next to it at Best Buy, you can see a $1,200 Dell or Lenovo or whatever they're selling. I don't even know the names of them anymore. And you go, well, this is obviously a cheaper computer. Okay. On the surface today, that price tag might seem like a cheaper computer. But how much software comes with it versus the software that comes with my Mac? How much support are you going to need? How much virus protection software you have to buy? Yeah. How many times are you going to have to take it back to Best Buy or have the Geek Squad come out because you're so laden down with pop-ups and stuff that you can't even work? So what is the total cost of that ownership, and how much does all your downtime cost? Yeah. And so it's the same thing with an NLE. You've got to look at how you're going, to reference back to what I said, how are you going to load media, sift through the media, store the media, organize the media, keyword it, anything that you need to do in order to be able to now I want to find the part that I want, because that's the next shot that's going to be, part of my story.
Yeah, because it's something that gets out of your way. And for the folks that are, the photographers out there that aren't familiar with the acronym NLE, that is non-linear editing, which is kind of seems weird that we even need to specify non-linear these days. Right?
I will say, in my business, nobody says that anymore.
Yeah. So what do you call it? Just
it's my tool.
It's my tool. It's my tool. All right. So. Okay, so on that, and for the folks that have seen the interview or listened to the interview that I did with Chris over on his podcast, I apologize. We're going to repeat a little bit of that here. And Chris, apologies to you too, because you're going to have to repeat yourself. So, okay, one of the questions I asked you on your podcast was this. I'm a Photoshop user. I have a subscription to Creative Cloud, right? Which means, so I have it specifically for Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign, and of course I have Lightroom, right? But in that subscription, which gives me access to the entire Adobe library of software, is Final Cut Pro CC 2014, as well as After Effects.
Premiere Pro.
I'm sorry, Premiere Pro. Thank you. The other Pro. Yeah. So Premiere Pro CC. Right. Yeah, that was a bastardization of the name. Premiere Pro 2014 CC and After Effects in there. So photographers that are listening to this are like, dude,
I'm done. It makes perfect sense.
Why should I? Why should I use Final Cut?
It absolutely makes perfect sense to just say, go use Premiere. And many people are. You will certainly, what do they always say? Nobody ever got fired for buying a Windows machine. I mean, you can totally go for that, and nobody's going to fire you. And that's why so much of corporate America is stuck using these crappy Windows machines. Mm-hmm. And yes, they are crappy. But and a lot of people are using Premiere, and you certainly are not going to make any enemies for using that. However, more and more people are seeing that they can be more efficient and work faster when they're using Final Cut Pro. Okay, and I'm talking about 10, not 7. So Final Cut Pro 10. Yes, the one that everybody said was like iMovie Pro.
Which we're going to get into, yeah.
Yeah, so, when it was released, it was very similar to, well, actually, you know what? It wasn't. It actually was nothing like iMovie, except for the fact that there was some rounded corners and people wanted, you got to remember, a lot of times what you hear when it comes to a press release or the news or popular public opinion, it's what can I wrap my head around and reduce down to a soundbite? Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, if you think about it, it's an awesome soundbite to say, oh yeah, Final Cut Pro. Yeah. It's like iMovie Pro.
Right. Yeah. It's a good elevator pitch, right?
Or an elevator bitch slap. Like, yeah.
You heard it here first, folks.
So yeah, I mean, and you know what? Apple has been so popular. Well, not so popular. When Apple does things well, they do it really well. Yeah. And when they do things poorly, people love to jump on, Apple.
Like the rollout of 10, right?
Yeah, and the rollout of 10 was, without a doubt, the worst moment of Apple's history in recent history. Yeah. It was, they made multiple and nearly irreversible mistakes. One of the things they did was that they immediately canceled or end-of-lifed Final Cut 7. And there were certain things that Final Cut 7 could and can do that Final Cut 10 could not do.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's like, whoa.
Now you can't do anything.
I don't want to buy that. And everybody said, well, that's okay. You still have your Final Cut 7. Really? Because I just bought 2 more machines and I need to put software on them.
Right. And you couldn't purchase it.
And you couldn't purchase it. And, I got to the point where I was like, hey, figure out how to pirate it because they're not helping you out. Yeah. And if you need it, you need it. So, and what's scary is now, is 3 years later, or 3.5 years now, people are still using Final Cut 7. And you got to remember, it's not just 3.5 years old because Final Cut 7 stopped being developed in about 2007.
Wow.
That's like in dog years, that's a lifetime.
It's an 8-year-old. It's 8-year-old code right there.
Exactly. It's a couple of lifetimes in internet time. So, yeah, you got to get off of that. And there's specific reasons for it. And we could talk about that whole AV Foundation thing that we discussed on my show.
Yeah.
But I think that when you're looking for that tool, you want to find something that's going to work for you at every level of the workflow. And I think that when you're looking at the temptation of just saying, hey, Premiere Pro, yeah, I got it. I think what you're going to find, and I'll give you, a little later on, we'll give you a really great example. Remember the thing I told you at the end of my show when we stopped recording? Mm-hmm. The whole Ken Burns workflow thing?
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you one example where you just go, oh, wow, that's really awesome. And when you see that is not an isolated case of efficiency that is available in Final Cut 10, you begin to realize one of the little buzzwords that I've been saying now for about 9 months, that Final Cut 10 solves problems for editors that you don't even know you have yet.
Yeah.
And I truly believe, and when I started the Grill about a little over a year ago now.
And you're on 102 episodes, by the way.
I just recorded with our friend Joseph Lanashki, episode 102. Yeah. when I started the show, I made some predictions, and about a week ago, I listened to that first episode again, and I got to say, the predictions have been coming true, and so the software continues to get more and more powerful, and even prior to some of the most recent updates, I had made the choice that this is the tool for me because it's fast and it's efficient, and it allows me to kind of let a lot of that sort of weird tech stuff get out of the way and let me get back to what I sat down in this chair to begin with for, and that's just to tell stories.
And I think the This Week in Photo audience, and me included, have an advantage over those folks like you that are, that you've been marinating in these nonlinear editors or these tools, for many, many decades now. We're coming into it fresh. So we're coming into it without the legacy of, we're used to the timeline over here, and where are my bins, and where's the multicam thing that I'm used to? We don't have any of that baggage with us. We're coming in looking at it from a photo-centric workflow. Like, how can I start to tell stories with motion, and do cool things with these new superpowers that apparently have been lying dormant. Right?
I love your superpowers line. Yeah, very interesting. I've been doing this for over 3 decades. And we have a woman that works for us, Sasha, and she's brilliant and she's talented and she's going to go places. And she had never worked on any edit system prior to coming to work here.
Good.
She came to us, not from a technical background. She came to us from a more, organizational background. And I sat her down at Final Cut 10 and I said, here's how you edit. She's like, oh, okay, I got this. And I walked out and she's good. She's gone. She's going. Mm-hmm. That was her first edit system. Then I put her on Final Cut 7 because she had to do some nips and tucks on a legacy project that was a few years old. Yeah. And she's like, what the hell is with this thing? Why is this so hard?
It's all perspective. It's all perspective.
It's totally perspective. And I think that, and I've seen this before, if you go back in my business to like the late 80s, when we transitioned from using video broadcast television cameras with Plumicon and Satacon pickup tubes, 3 of them, a red, green, and blue. Actually, technically, it wasn't red, green, and blue. It was Y, R minus Y, B minus Y. But you have these 3 tubes that are capturing the image through a prism. Maybe it was RGB. I don't know. Anyway, you're capturing this image through a physical glass prism.
Yeah. And
you're recording that to videotape, like this piece of mylar that you could crumple and rip and fall apart. Right. If you leave it on the dashboard, it will literally melt. Yeah. Okay. I mean, it was amazing we were able to capture anything. But there was a transition between these cameras that had pickup tubes and the more modern CCD cameras, which, we all are using some sort of CMOS or CCD or some sort of, basically the image sensor that's in your Canon camera or your Nikon camera. Mm-hmm. But that was not normal. That was not a thing in 1986 and 87. Yeah. But in 1988 and 89, these cameras came out. And I remember the guys who said, oh, I'm never going to shoot on that. That's crap. That looks like crap. Look at it. There's no depth. There's no colors. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't have to reg it. And you don't have to. And there was like a lot of benefits to it. And that we knew, you assumed, that the quality would improve. But this is clearly the future.
Yeah, you can see the vector. You can see that it was going in that direction.
Absolutely. And so you go from that transition, you go forward another 5 years or so, and you go from people that are used to editing in a traditional tape-based edit system, and you say, no, I'm going to give you this computer, this early generation Avid, and people are like, I don't do computers. Mm-hmm. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. Like, really? Because do you know that the calculator in your watch there has more computational power than what took us to the moon in 1969? Yeah. You use computers every day. The microwave oven in your kitchen has a computer that figures out how to make the popcorn just by hitting the popcorn button. There's computers in your life. Yeah. And so that was another big transition. And now we can't even imagine going back.
You have a burglar back there, by the way. I just saw somebody slip into it. Oh. I hope you know that there are people in there.
But you know that these changes happen. You know that they happen, and it's gonna happen. And so it continues to change, and it always will change, and there's gonna be differences. And what has been very interesting is watching Sasha inject herself into this industry post Final Cut 7.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she doesn't think anything of it. And so, like I said, it is a faster tool.
Yeah.
It does aid in the storytelling process. So, if those,
I'll tell you, for me, like I said, like it was literally been less than 2 weeks that I've decided, okay, I need to take this seriously and kind of, not that I'm going to stop using ScreenFlow, because, of course it's an awesome tool. I'm going to use it for a lot of stuff. But moving into something that's more professional, that has all the power that you just talked about, and multicam editing and green screen and all that stuff, to have that power. But I'll tell you, I went in literally expecting, and I was talking to somebody about this last night. I pulled up this project that I'm working on, and I'm working on for a client, and that's another reason, because clients are asking for this stuff now. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try to do this in Final Cut 10, because I talked to Chris, and now I feel like I know more than he does.
Expert.
I'm an expert now. I got this. It's easy. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to bring it up. I'm not going to be intimidated. I had all my stuff ready. And my goal for was it last night or the night before, was just to go in and organize things and get things, go in and keyword the clips that I'm going to be working with, and put things in, get everything ready so that I could go sit down maybe today and edit the thing and get it to a point where I had a draft ready to put on Whipster or whatever, right? So long story short, I pretty much finished it yesterday. I was like, wait a minute. Okay, I want this over there. I want this over there. Okay, put the audio in there. Oh, I want the audio to sound better. Put this on there. Credits, done. It was done. And
this is what I've been trying to tell people, is that when you look, if you take the time, okay, so if you're an old guy like me, and you look at this tool and you go, okay, let's just for a moment here, I'm going to try and forget all the crap that I do know.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to jump into this. You'll be surprised.
Yeah.
But if you're new, just do it. It's the better tool, and I'll tell you, there's some other reasons, and I'm not stupid, although many would argue the contrary. But when you think about who are you going to be working with for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, maybe?
Yeah.
The kids of today, it only costs you $300, done. And you have your copy of Final Cut.
No subscription.
No subscription.
Yeah.
Now, at $50 a month for your Creative Cloud, you're going to spend that $300 in the first 6 months, and you're only halfway through the year. For my $300 purchase that I made in the summer of 2011, right? I still have Final Cut.
Yeah.
So that's 36. We'll call it 40 months times 50. But I mean, I can't even do that month. It was at $2,000.
That's a lot of money. Yeah, I just say it's a lot of money. It's a lens or two. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Or a drone.
So if I look at what the kids are going to be playing with, and we're already seeing it. My friend Alex McLean, who co-hosts the Digital Cinema Cafe with me, he's a colorist, okay? And that's all he does, is he makes the final 2% look awesome, right?
Yeah, which is another scary thing, but yeah.
And he is seeing more and more of the music videos that he is coloring. The kids are coming in and they've cut it in Final Cut 10. They go, "Can you do this?" He goes, "I can do it.
Wow.
we can work with that."
Yeah.
And so, by adopting this accessible tool, very powerful. And I'm not saying I'm choosing accessibility over power. Not at all. I still believe it's a very powerful tool. But by adopting this accessible tool, it opens up the ability for me to kind of tap in to a young, vibrant, excited, enthusiastic, creative community.
Yeah. No, and I agree. I mean, it's it's kind of a weird way to think of it, because like I said, I came into it thinking I already have these bits on my hard drive with Creative Cloud, Path of Least Resistance, might as well just use all that stuff. And the other piece of that conversation, which we also talked about, was Adobe doesn't seem to be going anywhere, you know, in terms of leaving the planet or end of lifing Premiere, right? So that was part of my mindset. I'm like, okay, on the Apple side, Aperture's gone, as Joseph can attest to. You know, Soundtrack Pro is gone. What else is gone? You know, all these different, and of course it's software and these are companies. They have to evolve and do different things. So no one's dinging them for that. But when I look at it, I'm thinking I love Apple and the stuff that they do on the one hand, but on the other hand, I have a business to run and I have finite number of days left on this planet. Where do I invest my brain cells so that I get the most bang for the buck? So logic says use the Creative Cloud that you already spent money on, right?
Well, it kind of, yeah. You know, you had said to me on my show, you said, do I fear Apple aperturing, you took proper noun and made a verb out of it, aperturing Final Cut. And I don't know if you actually listened, please don't, but in the wrap up at the end of the episode that you and I did, I clarified some of my statements that I made about that comment. And one of them was that Apple has already apertured Final Cut. They apertured Final Cut 7.
Yeah.
They already killed it. And they come out with Final Cut 10. Now, you know, if you'll notice, the word pro does not flow off of my tongue when I talk about Final Cut Pro. Right. It's Final Cut 10. Yeah. And there's still a couple of features that I'm like, guys, you got to fix this. It's not horrible. They have implemented most of what I need. But they already did that. Yeah. They did aperture it. And what they ended up with is a tool that is far superior in probably 98% of the categories that you're going to look at it in. It's far superior to what we had in Final Cut 7.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing that popped into my head was I was thinking as I was going through this exercise and I had ultimately decided on Final Cut, I am not Chris Fenwick. You know, I am not Chris Fenwick. I'm not going to be editing the next Avengers or Transformers movie. I'm not doing commercials. You know, I mean, you could if you wanted to. You have the superpowers to do that. I don't have that, and I don't have the aspirations to want to get to do that stuff. I'm a photographer that wants to add the dimension of motion and sound to the stuff that I do, right? So with that, I'm thinking, you know what, if looking at iMovie's powerful. iMovie can do a lot of stuff. So if I could probably get by doing a lot of stuff in just iMovie in ScreenFlow. The power that's in Final Cut 10, the stuff that I'm like peeking below and seeing like, oh my God, look at all this stuff it can do. That's like years beyond what someone like me needs right now. But it seems accessible on the surface.
Let me ask you a question. Because
go for it.
This is fascinating to me because it speaks to a premise that I have about Final Cut 10.
Yeah.
Apple is very good at hiding power. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hidden power in Final Cut 10. All you got to do is go to the Apple website and go to apple.com/Final Cut Pro or whatever it is. I don't know where it is. And if you look at all the screenshots, like literally all the screenshots of Final Cut 10 on the website, you will only find, I believe, it could have changed, but at one point there was one screenshot of Final Cut 10 that bothered to show the inspector panel open. That's where all the power is. Right. Not all of it. That's where much of the power is.
Yeah.
They're not even showing that.
Yeah.
Now, why is that? It's a marketing choice because what they want to do is to give the power to you in such a way. And somebody I heard had a phrase for this. It's like something about disclosure, like, delayed disclosure or something. There's a term for it where I'm only going to show you what you need to know right now. If you need more, you will find it.
Yeah.
Okay, it's there. So you have to learn about how to open up the inspector. You have to learn how to open up the timeline inspector. You have to learn about opening up, you know, the render queue manager or the keyword tool. I mean, there's plenty of tools there. The voiceover tool, good grief, the voiceover tool is amazingly powerful.
It's killer, yeah.
But it's not on the front page, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because what they try to do is they want to make it accessible to anybody right off the top. Now, a professional could say, I want my tool to look complicated.
All tools should be complicated, or else it's not really a tool.
To which I say, what kind of, you know, damaged ego do you have that you have to have your client sitting over your shoulder looking at something that looks complicated? Yeah. I don't care if my tool looks complicated or not. What I care about is when you look at the program monitor up on the wall, are you educated? Are you informed? Are you moved?
Yeah.
Are you motivated?
Right.
Have I achieved the objective that I set out to do when I started in black and dropped in my first clip? Yeah. Okay? Because that's really what it's all about. I don't care if you think you know, if you look over my shoulder and go, oh yeah, I got iMovie at home. I go, yeah, that's cute. Okay, great. You know, it's not iMovie, but cute, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is the tool is really powerful.
You know, and I got to tell you, if you look and your tool looks complicated, you should probably go see a doctor. Just kidding. I had to get that in there. I could not resist it.
Wow.
All right. Okay. All right. So moving on. So the other piece of this equation for me was, like I mentioned at the top, the whole motion tracking and being able to do that sort of thing. So the other side of the equation is Apple's motion software, which works with Final Cut, right? And again, the same discussion comes up. Well, why should I spend $50 on that? Which is crazy, by the way, because that's a lot of power, $50. When I have After Effects.
Yeah. So again, you have no idea. So this is a little bit like, and I think we talked about this, that, you know, it's not like I have a Canon camera, so I have to buy my L series glass.
Yeah.
It's not like I have a Nikon camera, so I have to buy my Nikkor glass or whatever it's called. I'm trying to pretend like I know some.
That's right. You got it right so far.
So I don't have to limit if I edit in Premiere Pro, I am not limited to only using After Effects. Yeah. Conversely, if I edit in Final Cut Pro, I am not limited to only using motion. There are advantages and disadvantages of using both of those ancillary applications, whether it be After Effects, and I apologize to my After Effects animation friends that I just referred to your tool as an ancillary application. It's not. It's a very powerful app.
Well, it's perspective. It depends on where you come from.
Whereas motion is very much feels like an ancillary app to Final Cut, but that has to do more with the structure and the kind of under the hood mechanism of how it works. You know, although you can open up motion and you can open up a blank canvas and you could say, I'm going to start my animation, and you could make amazing, wonderful things. And if you really want to see the power of motion, you really need to go look up Mark Spencer. Oh. He is the man. Mark Spencer at Ripple Training. He is the man who knows motion, I believe, better than any of the programmers at Apple. Okay. He is a master, and he's a very talented and skilled educator. And he's the guy to go to if you're trying to learn motion. And the Ripple Training, I will say this also, the Ripple Training training videos are the only training stuff I have ever purchased.
Yeah. And when we spoke, Chris, when we spoke first, I told you that I had purchased lynda.com, you know, and you know, they sponsor This Week in Photo, but they don't buy a subscription. So I went and purchased a year-long subscription specifically to dive in there and get that Final Cut Pro 10 training. And then subsequently, after our conversation, I went and bought the Ripple Training. Amazing, amazing. It's on my iPhone. It's on my iPad. It's, I figured out multi-track, which, as if it needs figuring out, I figured out how to do multi-track, and I'm doing this interview. If you're watching this interview, it was edited using Final Cut Pro 10's multi-track feature.
Which is the bomb. Yeah. No, so seriously, Mark Spencer and Steve Martin, not that one. They're great guys. I've met them multiple times, and Mark has actually been a guest on our other show, Digital Cinema Cafe, but they are the people to learn Final Cut from.
Yeah.
So it's important to realize that it's a tool, and you can learn it to whatever depth you need. So to get back to your motion question.
Yeah.
I love After Effects, and I, for many reasons, have to subscribe to the Creative Cloud. Yeah. And yes, I have Premiere on machines, but I still use Final Cut. Right. I use After Effects every single day. Every single day, at one point or another, I'm going to open up After Effects and do something. And it is a fallacy in a ProRes world, ProRes being a video codec. It is a fallacy in a ProRes world to think that that the applications are not interoperable. I can make ProRes files in After Effects that I can play back in Final Cut 10. I can make ProRes files in Motion that I can drop into Premiere Pro if I want. Yeah. After Effects and Motion are different tools. They are much more different in their category than Final Cut and Premiere. Yeah. So it's important to understand how they work. And I got to say, for $50, Motion is a slam dunk. Yeah. But one of the things that's really spectacular about the ecosystem, if you will, between Final Cut and Motion is that you can create, well, let's take, for example, your show here. I apologize, I haven't seen one of your multicam shows. But
there haven't been any yet. This will be one of the first few. Yeah.
Hopefully it works. Yeah. When let's say you want to do a cool little lower third, okay? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, there's multiple ways to do that, and you could actually build it from, okay, let's design one in my head. We're going to take a round lens logo kind of thing, and maybe it goes pop out like that, and then out from that goes a little black flag, and then types on my name and Final Cut Grill or Podcaster or whatever, video or whatever. So there we just designed something. So you could build that piece by piece in Final Cut 10. You could take a little PNG of the round lens icon and you could animate it out from infinity. And then you could wipe on a black box, which would be a black solid that you crop down and drop the opacity and then animate the crop across the screen. And then you could do a couple of pages of basic text. But you're going to end up with 5 layers of things. And I got to tell you, I know a lot of editors that will do it exactly like I just said. You're going to actually 4 layers of things, and it's just going to be a pain. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Now, there's 2 much more smarter ways to do that. One, you could go to After Effects and you could build that thing in After Effects and then duplicate it and just change the name out, render out what's called an MOV that has an alpha channel, which carries all the transparency information. So the de facto cool codec to use for that is what's called ProRes 4444. And basically it just means it's got an alpha channel. Don't ask about the 4s. That's another show. And then you could drop that in. That's one way to do it. But the most sexy, cool way to do it is to make what's called a motion template in Motion that you then save and you export out to what's called, I can't remember the word, but basically in your little lower thirds tab in the lower right-hand corner of your screen.
Of Final Cut, yeah.
Of Final Cut, it's going to say TWIP. And you click on the TWIP subcategory and you're like, oh, look at this. Here's all my elements for the show. You could have a lower third icon that says, this is my lower third. You could have another little icon that would be, this is for a URL call out. So if I go, hey, make sure you check out digitalcinemacafe.com, boom, you could drop in the call out. And you build these icons once and you reuse them as many times as you want.
So you're giving me homework here. I need to build that for this show now, just because you said it.
Okay, so here's the thing. When you make those, you get to reuse them as many times as you want. And you could even do something like, say, hire like Mark Spencer or me to build you those icons, right? All right. And then you have accessible in your editor only the controls that you need. Right.
Would you like to put the text in or change the font size?
For instance, I have a client that I do a whole lot of work for, Charles Schwab. And they recently went through a rebranding and they changed their logo, and their logo is now a little square, a little blue square that says Charles Schwab. And so we designed this, I mean, it's not like it takes a genius to do this, but we made this lower third template where where the logo dissolves in.
Yeah.
Then from behind the logo, like I just said, a little black bar slides out, and then it goes dissolve, and it's, you know, name, title.
Yeah.
Simple. However, the bar, you know, it would be different for Frederick Van Johnson III Esquire, as opposed to Chris Fenwick. Okay, so your name's going to be longer than my name.
Yeah.
And a lot of producers, they want that black bar to be just as long as it needs to be, and not stretch all the way across the screen if the guy's name is really short.
So it should adjust based on the text, right?
It should adjust based on something. Now, unfortunately, there's no way to do it based on the text, but I actually built in the template that I made for this, I actually built a little slider bar that says bar length. I could name the tool what I wanted, and I just go whoop, 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 and now I can just make the bar as long as I want.
And you did that in Motion.
I built that in Motion, and I exported it into the effects browser.
Yeah.
In Final Cut, and now all of our editors have just the tool that they need, and the only tool they need to adjust on that thing is the length of the bar.
See, so we're back to what do you need? What's the right tool for the job? And for me, multimediographer, podcaster, photographer, whatever, those are the kind of things that make my life easier, right? So, and I'll rewind back in time. I remember, 10 years ago or so, I was really hot and heavy into After Effects. I was like, oh man, this is the tool. I can do anything in After Effects. Who needs Photoshop? Alpha Channel, whatever. I can do it in After Effects and export my stuff out. And, you know, I remember, and I'll tell you, the impetus of me getting that little bug was a movie. You remember the movie with Brad Pitt called Seven?
Oh, yeah.
You remember the title sequence to Seven? You remember how intricate that was? So I was like, that is an art form, just doing that. If I could learn how to do that, I'd be amazing.
So the Seven was a David Fincher film. And Seven is wildly heralded as being the genesis of what we now call motion graphics.
Really? I didn't even know that. But it was my genesis.
I think a lot of people consider the opening title sequence as being the genesis of what we currently call motion graphics. The irony of that statement is, however, that, and I could be wrong because I often am, but it is my understanding that if not most is the way to say that phrase, if not all, most of what you see in the opening title sequence of Seven is all done with practical effects in a camera.
Oh, so it's
not digital. It is not After Effects. It is not motion graphics. It is graphics on plates of glass being shaked and, you know, rattled with a drill. Like
some entrails being pulled across the screen. Yeah. Wow.
So it's so ironic that movie is the genesis of an entire industry, basically. Yeah. And yet
then it's not.
It's just made with cameras.
But it's so cool. So that level of, you know, we'll say that's not motion graphics, but that level of artisanship and that level of creativity that you could do, can you do that kind of stuff in a program like Motion, or would you need to move to more of an After Effects with all the bells and whistles to do that?
I'm going to give you an analogy that I'm sure some of my friends that work at Apple would want to strangle me for saying, because it's not really accurate, but it is. It's not wholly inaccurate. After Effects is kind of like a hunk of wood and a really sharp knife. From that hunk of wood and a really sharp knife, I can whittle anything I want. If my knife is sharp enough and small enough and I can drill holes and hollow things out, I can whittle anything I want. Motion, and again, this is not entirely accurate, but it's not horrible.
It's a loose analogy, yeah.
Motion is kind of like a potter's wheel, okay? Mm-hmm. And there are so many really amazingly powerful things that you can do in motion in regards to the filters and behaviors and replicators and things where you can like say, I'm going to take this little sparkly thing and I am going to replicate it across the screen. And then I am going to animate them. And now all of a sudden, in like 10 clicks, I have.
Right.
And to do the same thing in After Effects, I'd have to make 100 little sparkly things. I'd have to randomly put them in 3D space. I'd have to put a null object on it and rotate. I mean, I could do the same kind of thing, but it's going to take me 100 clicks as opposed to like 10 or maybe 1,000 clicks as opposed to maybe 10.
Yeah.
But there are many things like that that you can do in motion. You can certainly do little shaky, jittery things. But the most amazing thing about what motion does is its ability to generate effects that you can use inside of Final Cut. You can actually generate an effect that I get to use over and over and over again. Not
just an image. You're talking about something that's actually living with live parameters.
Right. So let me give you a great example. When Final Cut Pro 10 first came out with the Multicam feature, which you allegedly are going to hopefully cut this with today.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, honestly, I think the only thing that may not work is Skype, but let's not,
no, I've already tested it. It's going to work, yeah.
Did you test it for a long period of time?
I did.
Oh, cool. Okay, good. Thank you. So when Final Cut 10 first came out with Multicam, we did a music video here at our office where we shot a band. It's like a 6-part band. And we had 2 cameras, and we shot it with 2 cameras 10 times. So we had 10 different angles. Like, okay, this time camera 1, you focus on the bass player and you focus on the guitar player. Now camera 1, you do the drummer and you do the keyboard player. Now you do this singer and that singer. Now let's do them, and now let's put them in different places. And
all to the same soundtrack though, right?
Yeah. They were lip syncing. Okay. Yeah. And we shot that thing. So basically we had 20 angles. Okay. Now we throw it into Multicam. We say, sync this. It magically syncs it all. Yeah. We cut the hell out of this thing. It was really fun to do. But in the end, I was looking at it. I was like, the chorus of this song has like just so much energy and power, and it really needs more energy. So I go onto the Google thing and I go FCPX free filter shake, I think. And I find a website, fcp.co, where they have a whole forum of people that are creating and posting free Final Cut Pro 10 plugins that were generated by users using motion. What? Okay? Using motion. And they're generating these things and posting them. And I find this thing that has like basically it's a how much jitter do you want to do knob. And it basically takes this and it turns it into and it gives the chorus to this song like this bitchin' feel to it. So I take and I download this plugin, I install it. I don't even quit or restart Final Cut Pro. I go to the motion menu and it's like, oh look, there's my new free plugin. And I take that thing and I drop it on the 6 or 8 clips that represent, or maybe 10, I don't remember what it was, that represent the chorus.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I got this aggro, cool, shaky camera look for the chorus.
I'm going to need that URL. You're going to have to find it.
Well, it's fcp.co. Peter Wiggins runs that site. He's in England, and he's a great guy. He's been on FCP X.Grill. He's been on my podcast, whatever.
That show.
Whatever it's called.
Google knows. Don't worry about it.
He's been on my podcast. And there's a whole portion of his forum section that is dedicated to people posting and sharing their free plugins that they've created in Motion. Yeah. So Motion is more than just an animation tool. It's an effects generating tool.
So it's not just because I was thinking of Motion as being kind of like Final Cut is the motorcycle and Motion is this little sidecar with a little person in it, and it seems like it's probably not. It's more of a, another rider.
That analogy might mean something to you. I don't know what you're talking about.
I love it. I love Chris
No,
Fenwick, ladies and gentlemen. All right, Chris, I'm going to let you go in a second. I got 2 more questions for you.
No problem.
So you mentioned that multicam stuff and being able to sync, in your case, those 20 clips. I had read somewhere that Final Cut can take up to 64 clips.
Yes.
And synchronize them, which is insane. I don't know any instance where you need 64 angles of anything unless they're like launching a space shuttle or something, or landing it. But I had also, during my research travels on this, found out that, and you can tell me if this is true or not, Final Cut can do that, but I heard that an application called Plural Eyes will do it better and faster and more accurately than Final Cut can do on its own. Is that accurate?
I've never used Pluralize.
Okay, so you don't know.
I will say that there are people that swear by it.
Mm-hmm.
It is my experience that the workflow of dealing with Pluralize is, because although I have not used it, I've seen people use it, or I've had people bring me media that they have pluralized.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got to say, it's just really messy. It's just a kind of a train wreck. Now, I'm going to say that, and I promise you, people are going to go, Fenwick doesn't know what the hell he's talking about.
Final Cut Grill, ladies and gentlemen, direct your hate mail to Chris Fenwick over there.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm also going to say that, you said 64 tracks. Who could possibly use that?
Yeah.
On episode 97 of The Grill, I interviewed a guy from England named Vid Price. And Vid's primary bread and butter is music videos. Mm-hmm. And he says that routinely he gets footage from people where there's like 90 takes.
Jeez.
90 takes. So it does happen. So yeah.
But those are takes. Those aren't angles, right? That's when you'd use the auditioning feature in Final Cut Pro 10, right?
Well, there is some of that. You could do that. It's a little, it gets pretty deep. I'll just say it gets pretty deep. Is it a full take? Is it a partial take? Is it just, here's Taylor Swift singing the chorus at the beach, but we know we don't need the verses? It gets complicated, but yes, you can have many, many cuts that drop into the thing. So that's a big deal. Now, before we go, I teased earlier about, I want to give you one example of a gigantic time saver. And if it's okay, I want to mention that.
Go for it.
So
Please.
For photographer blokes and bloke is men and women.
Yes, thank you. Easy that way, isn't it?
Out. So here's something that you may need to do. You go to somebody's wedding and you shoot a bunch of beautiful stills, and you bring them back and you say, I'm going to make a little slideshow that is 20 stills, okay? It's just a preview of things to come, whatever. And yes, there's some great things out there. You probably have talked about like Enimoto and things like that. And I got to say, some of those things are spectacular what they do. Mm-hmm. But let's say you want to do just a simple, tasteful, kind of Ken Burnsy sort of thing.
Yeah.
Now, after we recorded my episode last week, we had this discussion about, the Ken Burns effect. Mm-hmm. And there are 3 different ways that you could do a series of stills that have nice little pushes on them, okay? Mm-hmm. So the first way to do it would be the way you would do it in Premiere, which is where you drop your stills in and you set a keyframe where you want the framing to start and a keyframe where you want the framing to end. And hopefully you do that after you sort of have picture lock, because if you were to extend or shorten or lengthen, a clip, the keyframes are not going to move. So you might have this beautiful push and then you forgot, I totally lengthened that one shot. Yeah. There's this beautiful little push and then it stops. And then it goes another 2 seconds, and now we're off to the next 3. So every time you make an edit, you're gonna have to change those keyframes. Now you could do that in Premiere. You can also do that in Final Cut if that's the way you choose to work. The second way you can do it in Final Cut is there's actually a feature under the crop menu called Ken Burns, and when you invoke that tool, what you get in your viewfinders, you see the whole photo that you're starting with, and there's a green frame and a red frame, and the green frame is the start and the red frame is the end. And you could say, I want you to transition from this framing to that framing over over the length of the clip, whether you make the clip 2 seconds or 5 seconds.
Sure.
That's the second way. Here's the bomber way to do it. Okay.
Because that was pretty cool to be able to do it that way.
It's not bad. It's
Yeah.
not bad. But my friend Alex Golner, again, guy who lives in England, and it's amazing this podcast thing because I have people, both guests and listeners, all over the world. I'm sure you do too.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
It blows my mind. So Alex is a great guy. He's wicked smart, and he wrote this plugin called Grow Shrink. Now, he's also a little loose in the head because he gives this thing away for free. And if you go to alex4d.com and you click around, you have to look for it. I know that I put a link to it in the show notes for my episode 101. And
yep, we'll do it here too.
Go steal that. So the Grow Shrink plugin, this is how it works. So let's say I'm going to do my thing with 20 stills, okay? Or say it's 30, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So I've gone through my Photoshop or my Lightroom or my Aperture, my photos, whatever, and I've picked the photos that I want to do. Now you have great, color control tools in your photo app. So go ahead and do that stuff there. Make it look really great on your screen. Take those images, import them into Final Cut into a keyword collection. My cool stills. Here's what you're going to do. Make a project or a timeline that is, a 1920 by 1080. Select all go to your keyword collection, select all, hit the letter E on your keyboard. They're going to spread out over the length of the timeline. Now, if you want, you can hit Shift Z, which will zoom out and show you the entire length of all those clips. And you can, if you need to reorder them, you can do that. Okay, fine. We're all good.
Yep.
Now, they're going to default to 10 seconds. So check this out. You drop your music in. Now, this is what I would do. Drop the music in you want to cut to, and then kind of select it. Use the letter M on your keyboard and go, cut, pop. Okay, so you put little markers. Now, you can measure how far it is between those markers, and you go, oh, the tempo of this song is 2 minutes or 2 seconds and 20 frames. That's going to, if the stills are that length, they're going to be good. So now, lasso, select all the stills, hit, I believe it's Option D, it could be Control D. Sorry, you can figure it out. Yeah. It's also in the menu to modify the duration. Now you go to your keypad and you go 220, which is 2 seconds and 20 frames. Hit enter. Now all the stills that were 10 seconds long are now only 220 long.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice.
Now you want to put a dissolve in there, and you're probably going to want a nice slow 1 second dissolve. You're lucky. The default dissolve length is 1 second. Command T. They all have dissolves in them. So now I have all my stills, the right duration with a dissolve, all boom, boom, boom. That was all really quick. Now I want to do some little pushes on it. You take Alex 4D's Grow Shrink plugin. You drop it onto the first clip and you watch it. By default, the Grow Shrink plugin is going to do a little 5% grow. It's like, okay, that might be a little too subtle for 2 seconds and 20 frames. So I'm going to change the 5% to maybe 7%. Try it again. Ah, that's good. That's a good feel to it. Now, select that first clip, copy. Select all the other clips and hit Command Shift V, which is paste attributes. Paste attributes, you have it in Aperture. They probably have something like it in Lightroom, I would assume.
Yeah.
It's one of the most powerful tools. Paste attributes allows me to select the parameters that I want to paste from the thing that I copied. And the thing that I want to paste is the Alex 4D settings.
So it will pick that up. Okay.
It will pick up that plugin. When I copy, it will pick up that plugin and allow me to paste the attribute of Alex 4D to the other 19 stills in the thing.
Wow.
Paste, done. Export, you're finished.
Wow.
Now, you could trim the music to match, and you're going to have a default little 7% grow. You can actually weight that zoom to like, oh, let's do a little push to the bride's face. Okay.
Right,
You can do that per clip individually.
But it sounds like what you just described, and like,
I could do it so much faster than it took to describe it.
Right, yeah. So 5 minutes, you got this thing at a point where you can just go in and finesse each one and add subjective manipulations to each photo.
Frederick, if what I described took me 5 minutes to do, you can take me out back and beat me with a stick, because that should take me about 40 seconds to do, literally.
That's crazy. And all from within Final Cut, all with a free plugin.
Yeah, and again, you can use the Ken Burns effect tool, but you're going to have to manually do every one of those. And Alex is a great guy. He's got great plugins. He is going to be. I'm going to break this news here, and you guys don't know who Alex Gollner is, but if you ever listen to my show, he's been a guest like 5 times. He's a great guy. I think I'm gonna kind of let the cat out of the bag. He's going to be actually building some bundled sets of very specific plugins and offering them for sale.
Awesome.
And I'm going to be the first guy to support him because he's one of those big brain genius guys that just absolutely needs to be supported. Because I will tell you, I use that Grow Shrink plugin every single day when I'm
Wow. Yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely support people like that are doing stuff. And yeah, you're right. I mean, it seems to be like this seesaw teeter-totter of great talent, knows how to get paid for it, knows how to generate money, no talent. It's got, and very few people are kind of in the middle of that, the balance, right? So
that's so true.
It's true. It's a teeter-totter, man. So but the last thing I'll leave you with, Chris, is, so I was sitting on the couch yesterday playing around in Final Cut, and I'm like, oh man, I need a graphic. I need to go into Photoshop to make a graphic. I'm on a MacBook Pro Retina, right? 15-inch. And I'm like, I didn't put Photoshop on this machine, and I don't even know if I have enough licenses left in order for me to put it on this machine because it's already on my 13-inch MacBook, right? So I'm like, okay, hey, I own Pixelmator. Let me use Pixelmator. Brilliant. It's like the perfect complement to Final Cut. And I got everything I needed to get done in this little Pixelmator application and went back into Final Cut. Everything was good.
I'll tell you, it's interesting. You know, we are very much beholden to Adobe.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've probably had Adobe people on your show over the years.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that more and more I am running into people that are just fed up with the whole Creative Cloud licensing thing. They're fed up with some of the technical problems that they've had with their authentication servers. And, you know, there is some really interesting and I will say just flat out creepy stuff that Adobe is doing in terms of selling user information to the government. And if you were curious about that, tweet me at Chris Fenwick on Twitter, and I will send you links to actual Adobe documents, not like some weird conspiracy theory like, oh, Alex Jones says. No, these are documents that are created by Adobe and in the public sector that you just read it and you're like, what the hell? Really?
We may need to link to that too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really creepy. And more I'm running into people that are actively seeking out ways to work without Adobe. Now, the people that work for Adobe, you're going like, ha, 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 ha. Yeah, we have you. Yeah, you probably do. Because I cannot say to a client, I will not take that After Effects project that your artist says, you know, I'm going to have to do it.
Right.
It is not unusual at all to hear people say exactly what you're saying, that, hey, I did this whole thing without any Adobe software.
Yeah. And it wasn't even like I was railing against Adobe. It was like, hey, because of their own restrictions, I can't do it on this machine. What are my options? Oh, Pixelmator's in the App Store. I've heard a lot of good things about it. You know?
Pixelmator's like, is it like $20 or something? How much is it?
It's not. It's around there, if it's even that much. Yeah, look it up. It was next to nothing. I remember buying it because they were featured in that one of the Apple keynotes, right? Because they'd released this cool iPad version.
It's $15.
$15, and you know, again, much like Motion, it's kind of that like, really? This is only 15. Where's the catch? You're like 15. Is that it's an entry fee, right? It's really $500.
Is that month?
Yeah, or is that a monthly fee?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'll tell you. And we'll just leave it at this.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why things like that are possible, okay, the reason Pixelmator is even possible is that Apple has gone to great lengths to put an incredible amount of power embedded in the OS.
Yeah.
Okay. And so Pixelmator is something that ties into Core Image and Core Effects and you know, I think you know, ScreenFlow that we were talking about, it ties into Core Animation, and Final Cut is built on that whole entire AV foundation. And that's why we're seeing such amazing performance out of this, because it's absolutely built on top of the functionality that's built into the OS.
Yeah.
That's why you're never going to see Final Cut for the Windows, because the OS doesn't support it. And Final Cut is so tied to the operating system And it makes things like that possible. So I say to Apple, you've done an amazing job at making these types of tools accessible. Because if I'm a kid and I want to paint flowers or whatever, I can't afford $50 a month.
No.
That's a tank of gas.
Right.
And
that's food.
But $15, I got that.
Yeah. That's 2 cups of coffee. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. All right. Well, Chris Fenwick, where should people go? The Final Cut Grill. What was the domain?
Yeah, it's a nightmare. Yeah. So Final Cut Grill is part of our little network, if you will, of 2 shows. Digital Cinema Cafe is the primary show, DCC. And on the same Digital Cinema Cafe website, you will find a button for Final Cut Grill, and you can, of course, subscribe to both of those shows in the iTunes, of course. And then you can follow me on Twitter at Chris Fenwick. You can also follow at fcpxgrill.com. And although oftentimes I paste the same thing between them, not always, so they are different. They're very useful to follow separately. But yeah, that's what I do. And also chrisfenwick.com. There's a lot of my old tutorials and stuff like that, and some new ones as well.
Yeah, I was over there digitally stalking you the other day. So good stuff. Good stuff, man. Chris Fenwick, thank you, man. I could talk to you for hours about this stuff, and like I was saying at the beginning, you know more about this stuff than most people. Well, I would say anybody that I know, you know more about it.
That's right. Need better friends.
Yeah, I don't know. This is good. Thanks, man. This has been helpful and educational all at the same time.
Anytime.
All right, man. Take care.